What if the most dangerous weapon in a room wasn't a knife, wasn't a gun, but a woman's shoe?
June 9th, 2013, Houston, Texas, a luxury high-rise condominium, a night of drinking, and by 2 a.m., a man was dead, found lying in a pool of his own blood, his face and head brutally struck 25 times, not by a blade, not by a bullet, but by the 5.5-inch stiletto heel of a designer pump. The woman standing over him? Ana Lilia Trujillo, born in 1968, a Mexican native, 45 years old, and she was still holding the shoe. The man on the floor? Alf Stefan Andersson, 59 years old, a soft-spoken Swedish-born biochemist, a University of Houston professor, a man his family described as kind, generous, and gentle. She said it was self-defense. The jury said it was murder. Tonight, you decide. To understand what happened inside that Houston condominium on the night of June 9th, 2013, we first need to understand the two people at the center of this story. Ana Lilia Trujillo was born in 1968 in Mexico. By the time this story unfolds, she was 45 years old, living in Houston, Texas. On the surface, she was just another woman navigating life in a big American city. But dig a little deeper, and a very different picture starts to emerge. Ana had a troubled history. She had been arrested twice for drunk driving. People who knew her described a pattern. When Ana drank, she changed. She became aggressive, volatile, dangerous. There were incidents of her attacking people, biting an ex-boyfriend, drunkenly going after a security guard. Even her own neighbors had caught her using the bathroom in their apartment after wandering in uninvited. This was not a calm, collected woman. This was someone with a fuse, and alcohol was the match. Now contrast that with the man she was dating. Alf Stefan Andersson was 59 years old. Born in Sweden, he had made his way to the United States, eventually becoming an American citizen. He was a biochemist and a professor at the University of Houston, a quiet, intellectual man dedicated to his research. Everyone who knew Stefan described him the same way: mild-mannered, generous, kind. His ex-wife, Jackie Swift, said he was the type of man who uplifted the people around him. His niece flew all the way from Sweden and told the courtroom she spoke to her uncle several times a week. And in their last conversations, he wasn't depressed. He wasn't angry. He was happy. Yes, Stefan had a drinking problem. Even his own family admitted that. But violent? Abusive? Everyone who loved him said absolutely not. That simply was not the man they knew. So how did these two people end up together? Ana and Stefan had an on and off relationship. Stefan was reportedly generous with her. He had even bought her a pair of $1,500 Christian Louboutin stiletto heels as a gift. But underneath the surface, there was tension. Ana later told detectives that she sometimes felt the relationship was moving in a direction she wasn't comfortable with. She described Stefan as possessive, someone who didn't want her to leave. But on June 9th, 2013, whatever was simmering between them finally boiled over. That evening, Ana and Stefan spent the entire day drinking together. This is important, not just hours, but the entire day. By the time night fell, both of them were heavily intoxicated. Around 2 a.m., they called a cab to take them back to Stefan's luxury high-rise condominium in Houston. And it was inside that cab that the first warning sign appeared. The cab driver that night was a woman named Rosemary Gomez. She would later take the witness stand and describe what she witnessed in her back seat. Ana was drunk. Noticeably, visibly drunk. She was cursing, acting belligerently. Her behavior was directed at Stefan, the man she was supposed to love. Rosemary grew so concerned that before Stefan stepped out of the cab, she grabbed his hand. She looked him in the eye and said, "You need to be careful. Your friend is not in her right mind." Stefan Andersson squeezed her hand back, and with a calm smile he said, "I'll be okay." He was not okay. That was the last time anyone outside that apartment would see Alf Stefan Andersson alive. What happened next inside that condominium depends entirely on who you believe. Ana Trujillo told her version of events many times, to police detectives, to the court, to the jury. And her story went like this. After they got inside the apartment, Stefan became jealous. Why? Because earlier that evening, another man at the bar had bought Ana a drink. That was enough to send him over the edge. He became angry, she said. His face turned red. He told her, "You are not going to leave me, ever." Ana claimed he grabbed her, chased her through the apartment, slammed her body into a wall, and threw her over a couch. She said he got on top of her, pinned her down, and made it hard for her to breathe. She was begging him to stop, begging him to let her go. And in that moment of desperation, with no other weapon in reach, she grabbed the only thing she could find, her shoe, a navy blue suede platform pump with a 5.5-inch stiletto heel. And she started hitting him. That was Ana's story. That was her truth. But the prosecution told a completely different story. Prosecutors argued that Stefan Andersson never attacked Ana Trujillo. They said the evidence told a clear, cold story. Ana, fueled by alcohol and rage, sat on top of Stefan while he lay on the floor. And then she struck him. Once, twice, 5 times, 10 times, not stopping, not slowing down. 25 times in the face and head with the pointed steel heel of her shoe. And Stefan? According to prosecutors, he never fought back. He only tried to defend himself. How do we know that? Because of the wounds on his body. Stefan Andersson had defensive wounds on his hands and wrists, the kind of injuries you get when you raise your arms to shield yourself from an attack. The wounds of a man trying to protect his face, not the wounds of a man attacking someone. And Ana Trujillo? She had no injuries, none, not a scratch, not a bruise. For a woman who claimed she had been chased, slammed into walls, and thrown over furniture, her body told a completely different story. Let's talk about that shoe for a moment, because it is unlike anything you might imagine. The shoe Ana used that night was not the expensive pair Stefan had gifted her. Those were the $1,500 Christian Louboutins. The shoe she used was a Cupid brand platform pump, navy blue suede, 5.5-inch heel. It cost less than $100. But when prosecutors had the shoe x-rayed and showed those images to the jury, the courtroom went silent. Inside that thin, elegant heel was a solid steel rod, running all the way through, like an ice pick hidden inside a shoe. When that heel came down on a human skull with force, it didn't just bruise. It penetrated. It destroyed. The first police officer who arrived at the scene, Officer Ashton Bowie, looked at Stefan Andersson's face and thought he had been shot in the head. That is the level of damage that shoe caused. After the attack, Ana called 911. On the recording played in court, she could be heard sobbing, breathless, panicked, crying out that Stefan had attacked her. But when Officer Bowie arrived at the apartment door moments later, he found something strange. Ana was standing there, making sobbing sounds, but her face was completely dry. No tears, no redness, nothing. She was sobbing, Bowie testified, but no actual tears were coming down her face. He called them crocodile tears. Behind her, Stefan Andersson lay in a massive pool of blood. He was beyond saving. Ana Trujillo was arrested the following day, June 10, 2013. She gave detectives a 4-hour rambling account of what happened. In that interrogation video, played for the jury, she claimed she only hit Stefan a couple of times and had no idea she had hurt him badly. "At first, I didn't know there was blood coming out of him," she told detectives. "He didn't even seem like he was hurt." 25 strikes with a steel-heeled shoe to a man's face and head, and she didn't know she had hurt him. The jury would later decide exactly what they thought of that explanation. By the time Ana Lilia Trujillo's trial began in late March of 2014, all of Houston was watching. This was not just another murder case. This was the kind of story that stops people in their tracks. A woman, a shoe, and a man beaten to death in a luxury apartment. It had everything: drama, mystery, a murder weapon nobody had ever seen before, and two completely opposite versions of the truth. The trial lasted 2 full weeks, and from the very first day, it did not disappoint. On one side, the prosecution, attorneys John Jordan and Sarah Mickelson. Their argument was simple and brutal. Ana Trujillo was not a victim. She was a killer. A woman with a violent history, a drinking problem, and a rage that on the night of June 9th had nowhere left to go, except into the face of a defenseless man lying on his own floor. On the other side, defense attorney Jack Carroll. His argument was equally simple. Ana Trujillo feared for her life. She was a woman with a history of abuse at the hands of men. And on that night, trapped in that apartment with a man who wouldn't let her leave, she did the only thing she could. She fought back. 2 stories, 1 jury, and a bloody blue stiletto sitting on the evidence table in front of them for the entire trial. That shoe never left the jury's sight. Every witness who took the stand, they could see it. Every piece of testimony, delivered in the shadow of that evidence, covered in dried blood, strands of Stefan Anderson's hair still caught in the heel. Its matching pair sat spotless beside it, a haunting contrast between what the shoe was and what it had become. But nothing in this trial compared to what prosecutor John Jordan did during closing arguments. Jordan walked to the center of the courtroom. He placed a mannequin torso on a table, and then, in front of the jury, in front of the cameras, in front of everyone, he climbed up onto that table. He straddled the mannequin, and he began swinging the stiletto heel down onto it, again and again, demonstrating exactly how Ana Trujillo had killed Alf Stefan Anderson. The jury watched with wide eyes. The cameras rolled. It was the kind of moment that gets talked about for years in courthouse hallways, and it made one thing crystal clear to everyone in that room. This was not a gentle, panicked act of self-defense. This was a sustained, violent, deliberate attack. Then came the moment the entire courtroom had been waiting for. Ana Trujillo took the witness stand, and she talked, and talked, and talked. Over the course of nearly 7 hours across 2 days, Ana gave what observers described as rambling, emotional, and deeply disjointed testimony. Her own attorney had to repeatedly signal her to stay on point, snapping at her, gesturing with his hands, whispering short, sweet, and simple, while she wandered off topic again and again. She physically acted out the fight for the jury. She gripped the air. She shook. She clenched her face. She described being thrown, chased, suffocated, terrified. "I became frightened," she told the court. "I did fear for my life. I felt he lost it." Her attorney asked her, "Why did you keep hitting him?" And Ana answered, "He wouldn't let go of my leg. The pain wouldn't stop." She also spoke about her past. A turbulent, painful life, she said, was filled with abuse at the hands of men. She described a man who punched her in the stomach while she was pregnant, causing her to lose the baby. She described another man who tried to rape her, and how she defended herself with a candlestick. She was painting herself as a survivor, a woman who had spent her entire life fighting to stay alive against violent men. And Stefan Anderson, she wanted the jury to believe, was just the latest one. But the prosecution was not finished. Stefan's ex-wife, Jackie Swift, watched Ana's testimony from the courtroom and said it plainly. "She's all over the board. It's so disjointed, it's just a bunch of ramblings." And courthouse observers agreed. Ana's hours on the stand, rather than winning sympathy, seemed to push the jury further away. Every contradiction, every deflection, every moment she couldn't explain why she kept striking a man who was already down, it added up. Prosecutors called 20 witnesses during the punishment phase of the trial alone. One by one, they painted a picture of Ana Trujillo that was very different from the frightened abuse survivor she claimed to be. Friends testified about her behavior when drunk, aggressive, unpredictable, and dangerous. There was the ex-boyfriend she bit, the security guard she attacked, the bizarre incident where her neighbors came home to find her using the bathroom in their apartment as if it were her own. She had 2 DUI arrests on her record. On the night she killed Stefan, she had been drinking all day. Her blood alcohol level was never tested, but everyone who saw her that night agreed Ana Trujillo was drunk. And then there was this devastating detail from the prosecution. Ana had no injuries on her body, none whatsoever. For a woman who claimed she had been thrown into walls, wrestled to the floor, and suffocated, her body showed nothing. Meanwhile, Stefan Anderson, the man she claimed was the aggressor, had defensive wounds on both his hands and wrists. The evidence was speaking louder than any testimony. After all the testimony, after all the drama, after 2 full weeks of one of Houston's most captivating trials, the case went to the jury. They deliberated for just 2 hours. 2 hours. On April 8, 2014, the jury returned to the courtroom and delivered their verdict: guilty of murder. Ana Trujillo stood perfectly still as the verdict was read. She showed no emotion, no tears, no collapse, just stillness. As she was escorted out of the courtroom, she turned to her family in the gallery, and she mouthed 2 words: "I love you." Her defense attorney, Jack Carroll, stood in disbelief. "They didn't ask any questions," he said afterward. "They all seemed like they were in a good mood. I thought it was in the bag. I was wrong." 3 days later, the same jury reconvened for the sentencing phase. For 4.5 hours, jurors reviewed the evidence one final time. They asked to see several pieces, including the blue suede stiletto heel, still stained with the blood of Alf Stefan Anderson. They came back with their decision: life in prison, the maximum possible sentence. And they also found, specifically and deliberately, that the crime was not committed in the heat of sudden passion. This mattered, because Ana's defense had argued for exactly that, sudden passion, which would have limited her sentence to between 2 and 20 years. The jury rejected it completely. Before the judge made the sentence final, Ana was given a chance to speak. She stood before the court and said, "I never meant to hurt him. It was never my intent. I loved him. I wanted to get away. I never wanted to kill him." Prosecutor John Jordan then addressed the jury one final time. "Send the message," he said, "that in our community, when you beat a man to death for no reason, when you come into a courtroom and slaughter his good name, that we in Texas are going to hold you accountable." The judge made it final. Life in prison. Eligible for parole in 30 years, meaning Ana Trujillo will not see freedom until around the year 2044, at the earliest. She will be in her mid-70s. After Ana was taken out of the courtroom, something happened that nobody had planned for. Stefan Anderson's niece, Ylva Olofsson, had flown all the way from Sweden to deliver the victim impact statement on behalf of her family. She stood before the court and spoke about her uncle with love and certainty. "I'm 110% sure," she said, "that he was never violent with Ana Trujillo. He was not depressed. He was happy." She described him as generous, as kind, as a man who would help anyone without hesitation. But then, she did something remarkable. She turned toward Ana's family, and she said, "I'm sorry for what you've had to go through." For 2 weeks, these 2 families had sat in the same courtroom, side by side, never speaking, separated by grief, by language, by everything that had happened. But those words broke the wall. After Ana was removed from the courtroom, her mother, stepfather, and aunt walked across the room, tears streaming down their faces. They approached Stefan's family, the people from Sweden who had lost someone they loved, and they hugged. Ana's mother, sobbing, said, "I'm truly sorry for the family of Stefan Anderson. I'm truly sorry." In a case full of rage and violence and heartbreak, it was the one moment of quiet, human grace. Alf Stefan Anderson came from Sweden to build a life in America. He became a citizen, he became a professor, he became a researcher. And on the night of June 9, 2013, he was taken in one of the most shocking ways imaginable. Ana Lilia Trujillo maintained until the very end that she acted in self-defense. The jury didn't believe her. And on April 11, 2014, A Texas court made sure she would spend the rest of her life paying for what she did. The stiletto heel, that navy blue suede pump that cost less than $100, became one of the most infamous murder weapons in American crime history. So let me ask you one final time. Was it self-defense or was it murder? The jury made their choice. Now you've heard the story. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this video kept you hooked, hit that like button, subscribe for more true crime stories just like this one, and I'll see you in the next one.